I lost my dad 10 years ago. He died about 2 weeks after I'd had my second child. So I'm like a new postpartum mom. I'm not sleeping. I've got both my baby and my dad in diaper. I'm caring for like beginning of life, end of life, all at the same time.
What do you say when we encounter tough circumstances in life? And how do we say things that are going to move us toward connecting with people rather than saying nothing and then it gets awkward and we kind of don't connect?
Whether you've been through a lot of challenging times, hardship, grief, loss of a loved one, insert the thing. We still make mistakes. We still say things we probably shouldn't say.
Katie, I'm so grateful for you joining me on Say This, Not That, the inaugural episode. This is so special for me because you're probably the first person I called when I first came up with the idea for this podcast. And so the fact that here we are doing it is incredibly exciting. And for the benefit of the audience, Katie is a dear friend. We met while working at Google. That's her day job. She also is the COO of the O'Malley House. In the unpaid labor space. In the paid labor space, it's Google. In the unpaid labor space, it's Casa O'Malley. But welcome. And I wonder if you can share anything else that would be helpful for folks to know about you.
Thank you. I'm so proud of us for making this happen amidst our schedules. So thank you for having me. So first of all, I remember that phone call when you reached out to kind of share this idea about what this, what, and that, or say this, not that. Maybe you could even elaborate on that a little bit more because I remember that. Do you remember that day?
I do. And it was a tough one, actually, right? So I think the general concept of what do you say when we encounter tough circumstances in life and how do we say things that are going to move us toward connecting with people rather than saying nothing and then it gets awkward and we kind of don't connect. And trying to say things that are going to not be off-putting, I always have dumb stuff in my head, right? How do we not say dumb stuff? Because I've certainly said it and I've certainly heard it. And so I feel like I've been on this journey to learn about it. And it started actually when my best friend got diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. You know, when you get I got that phone call. Have you ever been in that situation where you get a phone call and all of a sudden it's a twist and you remember time before and after that call? And in my case, it was my best friend calling me. She was living in London. I was in New York. And I get this call, and it was a cancer diagnosis. And I had the good fortune of being able to fly over to London and help her out and get to know things. But over the course of her journey of treatment, I realized that folks were saying stuff to her, well, you should just this, or at least that, or you know what you need to do? You need to eat these kinds of foods, or you need to talk to this kind of person. And I would watch its effect on her. And I would think, oh my gosh, I better not say anything that's going to be triggering for her. And of course I did. I remember one time I was going to a doctor's office with her and I asked about prognosis and was talking about different kinds of treatments. And we got in the car on the way home and she just laid into me. Like, you cannot, I do not want you asking about prognosis. It's hard enough for me to fight another day. Like, it's really important. I know you're just asking for the science thing, but you really gotta, I can't, it's too much for me.
Wow. And how brave and self-aware of her to know that and then communicate that to you, what she needed from you.
Yeah. I was super grateful for the feedback, and that was kind of the friendship we had. And so it was incredibly helpful for me. So I tried to be very conscious of that, right? And I was conscious of mortality. She was battling this terminal illness, and I wanted to make sure we said the things to one another, which we were able to. But, you know, sadly, she passed away, and it's about 10 years ago now. And when she did, all of a sudden, I was on the I didn't know how to deal with my grief. And I was on the receiving end of some really lovely, amazing things that people said and did. And some stuff that I was like, you know, everything happens for a reason. God needed to take her. This needed to be now. And those things just didn't feel right to me. But the person that said, Kristen, you know, I've lost siblings and I've lost family members. And what I've learned is that grief is messy. And it comes in waves. That when I heard that, I thought, oh, that
Well,
connects. I kind
yeah,
of know what to do with that.
that's what I was gonna ask is, like, what was it about that grief is messy or it comes in waves, like, those examples, what was it that landed about those that maybe didn't about some other commentary you were getting?
I guess it just more aligned with what and how I was feeling. And
Mm.
it didn't force me to take on the other person the way the other person like made meaning out of the situation.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more on that. Like, what's an example of someone else making meaning of your situation?
Uh, well, if you said, well, if she hadn't have passed away, you would have never gone to spent that time in London. If she had never gotten sick, you would have never spent that time in London.
Mm.
And you would have never have um, connected with so and so who you now still keep in touch with, or you're now whatever vacationing with every year.
Ah, and that's
And it's like,
their way
no,
of
that's connecting the dots, or everything happens for a reason. Like, does it?
mm,
Or can you decide that, oh, after that happened, I chose to do something meaningful, and that's just how I think of things. And
yeah, and I get yeah. Keep going.
so I think some of those didn't resonate. But what I learned was that, oh, I really appreciated it when people reached out. I
Mm,
really appreciated somebody sending a text, calling, sending a note to feel connected during that time. And so I wanted to find out like how to do better with it. And I mess it up all the time. I mean, I still mess it up all the time, but I thought this would be a great what a great way to collect stories and learn how to do better.
mm,
And so this was, I think the initiation of this was I got a call from a friend of mine, unfortunately, with sad news that another mutual friend and colleague had passed away suddenly in his mid 40s, was found, died asleep in his bed. No um, untoward circumstances, just very unexpected and unexplained. Otherwise, pretty healthy. And
mhm,
I thought I was the person that then had to tell some of his colleagues at work. And I
mm.
didn't work there anymore. We had both left Google. And so it was up to me to figure out, okay, what do I say? And I'm like, I'd rather have a phone call, but I probably need to text or email this person to get their number to be able to have a phone call. And I started typing different things like, do you say it on? And realizing, gosh, even after you've experienced tough stuff in life, it doesn't mean that you know the answer.
Right, right. We're still out there fumbling and trying, right, and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
So what I guess in that moment, were there any examples of things that either you said or others said to you that were either, like, really landed well or didn't? Because we can learn from what didn't too.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you're asking all the questions here. This
Hey,
is
I'm a coach.
hilarious.
You invited a coach on. I'm gonna ask a lot of
Oh my
questions.
goodness. Oh my goodness, we got to get your stories. Well, because and the reason I called you is because I know that you and I had talked about it, and we have
Mhm,
similar experience of finding good things and
mhm,
remembering some things that didn't land so well. And what I would say is I often come back to I heard Brene Brown say this line, which is I can't fix it, but I'll walk through the pain with you.
mm,
And I've actually repeated that. And sometimes it's in the form of a text message where it'll be, hey, I know I can't fix this. This sucks.
mhm,
But I'm with you. I'm
mm.
with you for this. I'm here for you. So that would be definitely one. How about yourself?
Well,
I know
it's
you've
in
got some here.
oh, totally, but I mean, this is, you know, actually, this is one of the ways, weirdly, you and I met, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
You were doing you did a presentation at Google at this large leadership offsite. What year was this? 2019, 18,
Yeah, I think
somewhere
so.
around there, about Fatma, your friend, about that journey with grief. And I remember watching it and I was so touched by it. I do you remember this that I came and introduced myself to you? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And so I remember I just it was I felt the connection as you were talking through it. Um, and I think even as you were just talking through these examples now of like what do you want people to get out of these videos ultimately? Say this, not that, right? Um, there are a few reflections I have even in hearing you there. One, it's almost just awareness. just reaching out is better than nothing at all. Full stop. That's the plus one. Like, if you're debating, do I say something or not? It's say something with an awareness that you might fumble, you might not get it right, but that's better than nothing at all. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
because we know it's hard to do that and it can be really uncomfortable, my goal here is that if you come and listen to some of these stories, you can find a snippet of something that, if needed, you can literally cut and paste. Like, because
Yeah.
the whole thing is say something, my goal is to give people some examples that they can work with so they don't have to come up with it on their own all the time.
Yes. And that's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit of. Okay. First of all of us should just accept reaching out is better than not, period, full stop. And own and have a little bit of awareness that we might not always say the right thing. We probably won't, but the intention is more important sometimes than just the words, right? And
Correct.
then I love this headline that you're raising around. Well, like, give me some practical examples. What is it? Actually, just hearing you say what landed well for you when people just um, acknowledge the pain and maybe didn't assign their own meaning to it. Like, that's kind of a takeaway I'm hearing.
Yes.
Um, and I know you and I have talked about this because we both lost people that we love and we care deeply about. But some of these tips and tricks don't necessarily only apply to losing a loved one, right? I mean, just the concept of say this, not that. What are some other examples? You and I were talking about this the other day. Like, what are some other examples where this still applies, even if I haven't experienced the level of grief of losing a loved one? But just this notion of finding the right words and maybe say this, not that, is still applicable to many of us outside of just grief.
Absolutely. Well, think of times when something happens in life and you're not quite sure what to say. So it could be a health diagnosis.
Mm,
You get diagnosed with cancer, a dear friend does, or
mhm,
insert any other condition or illness. There's a tragic accident, right?
mhm,
So any of these tougher things, I think, or grief, or there's a death, I think the tough things come to mind really quickly. And
mhm,
sometimes we shy away from picking up the phone or sending that text message because there are never good words in those times. And what I've
mhm,
learned is, here's a say this, right? Just say, I know there are no good words. I
mm,
know nothing I can say can make this better, but I'm here for you. I'm here with you.
mhm,
That's a thing. But as I zoomed out the lens, I thought, gosh, this applies to so many different things. Okay, somebody gets a divorce. Somebody loses a job. How about this? I've been so shocked. I've had the great privilege of leading so many different teams over the course of my career. And it's wonderful when somebody comes into my office and says, Kristen, I'm expecting. I'm pregnant.
mm,
And my first response to that is always, congratulations. But I've heard friends of mine, I don't have kids, but I've heard friends of mine say that when they announce their pregnancy at work,
yeah.
I mean, you've 4 kids. Tell me, have you gotten, what kind of responses have you
It's
gotten?
so funny. There should absolutely be a manager training where you role play this moment over and over because there's only one right thing to say. Congratulations, right? Like,
Congratulations.
that's it. Regardless of how you feel about it, congratulations. And that should just be role played over and over. I've definitely been met, as you mentioned, CEO of the O'Malley household, 4 direct reports. Um, I've not always been met with
That's children for
congratulations.
people, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we need to understand,
thank you.
and
My team. Yes, those are children. I have not always been met with congratulations. So that's a very clear say this, not that,
can you
regardless of
think
how
of
you
one that
feel.
somebody said?
Yeah. Who have you told? How, how is that relevant? uh, I'm trying to think. That one caught me the most off guard because it was like, what are we hiding? What's happening here? Um, Sometimes confusion, trepidation. So actually, that's genuinely where I think it should just be practiced. Like, we practice things so that you just
Yeah.
have a reaction. Um, I actually, speaking of practice, when you just don't know what to say, I had a friend who went through, um, infertility for a while, and she was losing a lot of pregnancies. And I remember her saying she was so sick of having to say to anyone who might see that she was expecting and then she would lose the baby, having to explain. I'm no longer we lost it, like, and you're doing this in the middle of drop off at school at 8 AM I mean, it's just like, you don't always wanna drop altitude into a heavy conversation. All of us can relate to that, right? Whatever it is that you don't feel like unpacking,
Right.
and that was a big learning where we just practiced. Okay, what do you wanna say in those moments? And how do you just practice not being too it almost neutralizes the trigger. So when someone says something, you've neutralized it. You've practiced exactly how you're gonna come back. And I can't even recall where she landed on that one. It might have been something, to the effect of, um, "We're not expecting the child or we're not expecting any more. Thank you for asking, though, and I'd really rather not talk about it right now," or something. It was more eloquent. We refined it, but we just practiced it over and over, and it neutralized the trigger for her, so she was able to do it and move on with her day. And actually it followed up with a question that she threw back to the person that pivoted the conversation, right? So an immediate throwing the ball back, and she almost like brought it back up for air. So how do you consider a question or a way that it throws the ball back to the other person? It takes the energy off you. It was something we would practice.
Changing jobs, sometimes people
Yeah.
take time between jobs and folks don't quite know what to say when you're the person or you are on the receiving end of it. I did an interview the other day, which I'm excited to release with my goddaughter, who is 18
Oh,
and graduating from high school, and right. And we spoke over the summer before going to college, and she talked about how everybody would ask her, "When are you going to college?" And she would say August 15th. And she goes, "But what do they actually want to know? When they're asking me this, how do we connect across generations and
mm,
say things that are going to drive us together and closer as opposed to push us apart?" So people were asking things, trying to connect, but not quite knowing how to get the other person to open up in a useful way.
yeah, that's a great point. As you say that, I remember in high school, I hated when adults would ask me what I wanted to do when I grew up. Did you get that question a lot? How did you feel about that question? I hated it.
I feel like at the time I was just like, "Oh, I want to be in business or I want to be an entrepreneur." So I had an easy answer, but it's not that I actually knew or that I
Right.
actually had job plans,
I hated it. And the irony is I'm 43 years old and I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
right?
So like I guess I saw it as so much pressure of like, uh, do you know 52-year-old talking to me right now? Like how confident are you in what you're doing? It felt I remember as you're saying that thinking about your goddaughter, the pressure that came with that. Clearly I was putting it on myself in some capacity, but um you're so right that these just thinking about how do we drive this connection ultimately, especially across age gaps, because that just brings me back. I used to hate getting that question.
Yeah. So that's the idea, is that this is to give people some stories that are entertaining, hopefully,
Mm,
because sometimes the things that go
yeah,
wrong make for the best stories,
yeah,
which I thoroughly enjoy. And then for the things that go right, okay, great. Take it, use it, copy it. That's the whole
yeah,
goal here.
yeah. And you know what? When you kind of pitched this idea to me, I remember the phone call about say this, not that. I love the practicality of it because we're all genuinely trying to think about okay, well, what are those words? What did that text message look like? But I also remember that sometimes it's not always about words, but actions,
Yeah.
right? And so you and I have talked about this a little bit. I um similar to, you lost your very best friend and we've talked a lot about her. I lost my dad 10 years ago. He was awesome in terms of like the dad lottery I won, to be very clear. He was amazing. And I remember he died about 2 weeks after I'd had my second child. So I'm like a new postpartum mom. I'm not sleeping. I've got both my baby and my dad in diaper. I'm caring for like beginning of life, end of life, all at the same time. And I remember observing what was hard was when a lot of people had questions for me. What can I do to help? What can I bring? What do you want for dinner? And it is so well intentioned and I'm so grateful. And I remember it required energy of like, I don't know what I want for dinner. I don't even know how to get out of bed right now. I don't even know what my next 30 minutes looks like. So I actually remember distinctly the people that did one thing tactically different, which was just they didn't ask, they just did. And it was just action. A few examples. I would get text messages. Uh, Coffee and bagels will be at your door at 7 a.m. That was it. Like, I didn't even have to engage, I didn't have to respond, I was so
Yeah.
grateful, and it didn't require any energy of me, any. Um, dinner will be at your door 5 o'clock tomorrow. I'm bringing Chinese food. If instead you want Mexican or option number 3, respond now. Otherwise, Chinese food at 5. Like, it was so simple. So maybe the takeaway there is, like, no lift or energy from the other person, you know? Um, it was really meaningful, and I remember at one point sitting in the room, this is probably, like, maybe the day before my dad passed, so I'm sitting there, I'm holding my newborn, he's right here, and I had some friends who I knew that I probably had tons of text messages I hadn't responded to, I hadn't gotten back to them. They just walked through the door, they put all this food on the they didn't even really talk to me. They started changing the flowers in my mom's planters. They just, like, a glow up, if you will, a glow up of the space. It was a very sad, weird space as someone's transitioning, and they just came in and did a glow up. One of them took my son Sean from me for a minute, and she said, "Just go take a nap. Come back in an hour." I went upstairs. I took a nap. It was like it. I still remember it to this day because it was like I didn't have to put any energy out there to ask for it. They weren't really seeking anything in return. Um, and it was a beautiful how I experienced it was like a beautiful reflection of showing support and love in a really hard time. And it made our space a little more inviting. Um, and I had a big learning from that of just like what actions can you take to just maybe make their day a little brighter and ask nothing in return. Does that make
I
sense?
love that. I love that. That's so helpful, and I completely agree. Doing something,
Mhm.
demonstrating your presence, and also you made a point that I would just reinforce, which is not expecting a response.
Yeah.
I often will actually put that in a text message, which is thinking of you, was just, saying a prayer for you about this, or just dropping such and such off, like no need to respond.
Yes. Yes, that
Right.
is really meaningful, right? It releases them. How I experienced it was it released me from having to owe you anything in a time where I don't have much to give, right?
Right.
And actually there's this concept that one of my friends introduced me to around when someone's going through something hard, anything. Think of the things you just named. It could be a divorce. It could be, oh my God, I think about in January, the fires in LA, reaching out to all of our friends in LA. If someone's dealing with a death or an illness, whatever it is, you think of the person that has the thing, they are in the nucleus, they're in the center. And where you should be going for your energy, your feedback, your input should never be towards the center. It's always in the outer orbits. So, I have a friend.
Maybe give
Her
us an example. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
let me give
help.
you an example. I have a friend. Her husband's going through some health challenges. He's the center. He's the nucleus. I'm not going to seek much from him. I'm going to give to him. I'm going to drop off coffee at 7 a.m., right? But not ask for much. She's the next orbit. Imagine her role, caretaker. This is a little scary. They've got kids. They're dealing with some health challenges. I'm also not going to ask much from her, right? I'm pretty close to them. I care deeply about them. So I might be in that next orbit. I'm not going inward for what I need. I'm not asking that of her or him. I go to the outer rings. Maybe my friends that don't know them as well, where I need some support or I need to dump some of the emotions or feelings about it or get some feedback. But it's if you can almost envision these rings and the person going through the thing is in the center and you shouldn't be expecting energy to be coming back from that. Like it's like Fatma told you of like I don't need to hear you asking about prognosis. It's enough for me to manage myself right now. I don't need to be managing you, right?
Yeah.
That's what God is. That's basically the feedback she was giving you. So, whenever we observe someone we care about going through something, usually it takes a toll on us too because we care deeply. So we're going to carry it too. When you need input, energy, feedback, something from it, go to the outer rings. Don't go inward. And I think that has also helped me think about how I support those that are more central to whatever the nucleus is, and also how I get the support I need when we still are carrying like that,
Yeah.
you were one of these outer rings for Fatma. You deserve support and care and love as you're going through that too.
Oh, and I have to say, I am so grateful for all of my friends and family and like extended network during that time because I felt so cared for. Like I knew that there were people that I could turn to. I'm thinking of one friend of mine who anytime I would call, he'd be like, "Yeah, let's meet up. What do you need?
Mm,
Coffee, drink, etc." Um at the time I was actually pretty involved in a church community. I just started going to this one other church nearby where I was living in Manhattan, and just having other people around like who had sort of the same like value system. There was just they'd be like, yeah, we're gonna say some prayers in the name of your friend. And I thought, oh, that for me, for my belief system, that really meant something, and I could tell that that really made a difference. And so I think that that's incredibly helpful, that like being sometimes being there as the support to let other people blow off steam is the key. There's someone that I talked to who's a friend of mine who will be on this show as well,
mm,
who's a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner at Memorial Sloan Kettering for
mm.
like hospice actually.
Oh,
And
she's an
so
angel. She's an angel is
yeah,
what she is.
but
Yeah.
I asked her, right, like how do you where do you go?
Yeah.
Right,
Where
because
does
she's
she yeah.
always caring for people, and and how does she and her colleagues find a way to release that. So I think the point you make is really important. I wonder if you have a good answer to, I always find myself having to temper my curiosity
Oh,
when
yeah.
um I get some news from somebody, because I
Yeah.
immediately want to know, well, what, how, why, any additional details, and I'm often really curious. But I usually try, I've learned over time to try to take a minute and say, is that asking going towards the nucleus like you just described?
Yep.
And is that going to be putting too much pressure? And so how do I just say the least amount of things and create space where if and when the person's ready
Right.
to tell me, they'll be there. I'm thinking about a situation where a friend of mine's dad had a really significant health situation play
Mm.
out. And I had a lot of, she called me up to tell me some things, and I asked a handful, kept it
Mhm.
very baseline to see how much she wanted to share. And over time,
Good.
she chose to share more and more. But my role was just to be the support of what that person needed at that point in time. I don't know if you have thought about that or if you've been on the receiving end of that in
Yeah.
different ways.
Well, I love your reflection, almost like your quality control check for yourself of who, like when I ask these questions, who is this in service of?
Yes.
Right? And if it's my own damn curiosity because, oh my gosh, what does that diagnosis mean? And what will happen? And what is the treatment plan? And who does that serve? Fair question. It might be your own curiosity, your own anxiety, your own accepting and processing this news versus the person, to your point, in the nucleus or closer to the nucleus. So even that is a heightened awareness. I guess back to our point of, first of all, just reach out versus don't. Headline number
Yeah.
one. The second one might be, even if you can then layer on that level of awareness of who does this serve? Oh, this is kind of just my curiosity. That might not serve them. That is massive progress. And also maybe giving them that permission or consent. Hey, I'd love to hear more about it, but if that's not supportive to you right now in this moment, that's perfectly okay. You're giving them basically consent. Do you want
Yeah.
to
Are
talk
you
about
the
this or not?
person that they want to address this with or not? And if
Yeah,
you're not, it's got nothing to do with you,
exactly.
usually.
It's not
Right.
about you. It's not about you.
Like, if you're not,
You're
it's
an
not.
outer ring. It's not about you. Right? That's actually it's a really, really good point. And look, whether you've been through a lot of challenging times, hardship, grief, loss of a loved one, insert the thing, or haven't, we still make mistakes. We still say things we probably shouldn't say. Back to that headline point of maybe just get comfortable saying being willing to make some mistakes and get some feedback to course correct it. Just the other day, and I consider myself someone with pretty high awareness on these things. I asked a neighbor lost her husband a few years ago, and I hadn't checked in with her on it in a while. And I said, "Hey, I haven't checked in with you, on this. Like, how are you doing?" And she kind of looked at me like, "I don't even know how to answer that question. Like, how do you think?" Or I asked, "How are the kids doing?" She said, "I don't even know how to answer that question. Like, how do you think they're doing? They lost their dad." Like, I felt awful. Also, what a great point. How should she answer that question? What did I expect? and it's not about me. And so my learning there, I even said to her, "That's a really good point. I'm sorry. I don't even know, like, what what do people ask that is supportive? Like, what are some ways that people have asked things that is actually supportive?" And she said, when people say, "How are you doing today?" Like, they ring fence it,
Yeah.
right? "How are you doing today?" And that has been, just back to say this, not that. That's a very practical tip that I've started to practice when it's something that is so heavy and meaty that you're a little like, "How are you doing?" Doesn't even grossly begin to acknowledge it. So, how are you doing today? I acknowledge, you might not even want to talk about this, but I've been thinking about you. How are you doing today?
I love that. Yes, time fencing things.
Yeah.
I've heard something similar too. I remember I remember a nurse coming into my friend Fatma's room, and she would always say, "Feeling any better today?" So it
Oh,
would be today or this morning. It would be sort of what's the time frame, and are you feeling any better? Because you're probably feeling crappy.
yeah.
um, but are you feeling better or worse? And in her case, as a healthcare provider, she was trying to figure out, okay, are you doing better or worse? And how do
Where are
I
we at? Yeah.
adjust things as needed? But the answer was definitely going to be, I feel terrible, if it was just, hey, how you feeling?
Yeah.
But to this brings up a great point of, I do that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
hey, how's it going? How you feeling today? And then
Mhm.
when you get that look from the person, I think what I want to encourage people is to also say, hope all is well as can be in these circumstances, like
Mm.
given the circumstances. Like, I know all's not well, but
Yeah.
like, hope as things are as well as can be given the fact that the kids are struggling with having lost their dad or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. So I think just not shying away from recognizing that our default, we have so many default mode one liners, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the way we interact with one another, and just recognizing that sometimes we're saying that because we want to connect and reach out, but taking a step back to say, "Ugh, if that didn't quite land," or "Wait, was that just a default? How
Yeah.
do
And
I say, ooh, yeah, you know what?
yes.
Gosh, my bad. Let's
Yes.
actually. What I really want to say is that I care about you, and
Yes.
here, if you want to talk about things, and if not, um, let's go watch Bravo and laugh at whatever your
Yeah.
favorite show is, right?
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or let's go blow off some steam and do whatever our favorite sport is or whatever
Yes.
activity.
Yes. I think what I'm
Get some
hearing in that,
retail therapy.
yeah, I think what I'm hearing that is back to the awareness of, like, it's okay to name that in the moment.
Yes.
But right when you get that reaction or that look, or someone, and actually that's even better that they're willing to give you that feedback versus the just like smile and nod and they're privately insulted. Um, so that's okay. And it actually probably drives even more connection in that moment if you were to say, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. How would I even expect you to answer that question?" Right? Um, what do people ask you that's actually supportive? Right? Or, "I can't even imagine anything would be supportive right now. What, wanna get some coffee? What would be helpful? Do you wanna go grab a bite to eat?" Like, just, give them that agency. It's probably very disarming, frankly, to name that. Because if you're them, sometimes it's like a little bit of like what Fatma was coaching you on, of like, they don't have the capacity to coach everyone else on this. Like, they're dealing with it, you know?
Yeah, and the circle gets smaller, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I noticed the circle getting smaller of um who was taking and giving energy. And so she
Mm.
used to talk a lot about her. She was very in touch with how she was feeling and sort of what was giving her energy. She was tended to be a pretty introverted person. And so if there was lots of people around, that could have been draining. And so when there were people around, it had to be the kind of people that were infusing energy in a positive
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
as opposed to taking it back in a negative way. And so I've seen that happen to other folks too, of like, pay attention to what's fueling you
Yeah.
versus what may be draining you.
Yep.
Um, and now that I'm saying this out loud, it makes me wonder if that's even a thing that you could say. I could imagine myself saying that in some way to somebody, to be like,
Mm.
hey, would you be interested in this? or it seems like you may be going through a tough time. Like, would this be, I thought we might do this. Would that be energizing for you? But if you think it might be a drain,
Yeah,
no worries.
giving them permission
Yeah.
to say no. You know what? As you talked about that notion of how do we sense check ourselves if something is just serving our curiosity versus the person we care about? I observed that with myself during the LA fires, reaching out to everyone in LA of starting to want to sending texts and pings, starting to want to, is your house okay? Is it not? Hold on. Do they owe me that information right now while there's literally fires in their neighborhood? Probably not. Let me update Katie O'Malley if my house stands. That was, I remember a gut check of, hold on, what am I actually trying to get across? That I'm thinking of them and that I hope they're okay. And I'm here if I can send anything that would be supportive, right? Um, and so that was something I remember wheeling back because it was like, it was actually my curiosity if your house still stands. Do you really owe me that information right now? No. So maybe, back to what are some practical examples where we see this express itself when that's an example of I'm requiring energy of them. I'd like to know what's going on with you. Do they really owe me that? No. I just want to know they're safe because I care about them, right?
Yeah.
So, you have my wheels turning around moments where I've even observed that in myself of like, this is kind of just for my curiosity, the intrigue of everything going on, whatever the crisis is. So, how do you gut check that with yourself and then consider how do I simply give towards the nucleus and those inner rings versus take? And then if I need my cup to be filled, I go outwards toward those outer rings.
Have you found things have evolved over time? In terms of your proximity to a given event, right? So let's
Mm,
say your dad passes away. Is the way
yeah.
that you want to talk about it or interact with people change over time?
Oh, that's a great question. How about for you? I will respond, but now I'm so curious of you. It's Fatma, and I will respond. Like, has that changed and evolved for you?
I th- I think so. I think that oftentimes when we are in the midst of any circumstance that we find ourselves in, when it's just happened, there's a lot that goes on. Sometimes there's if somebody dies, sometimes there's the planning of logistics
Yeah,
of what are you doing with things or managing an estate or whatever the case may be. Or
yeah,
if it's unexpected and tragic, if there's an accident, there's things to be triaged and things to do.
yeah.
And things change over time. But I also try to not make the assumption that just because it's further away doesn't mean it feels less intense.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful, actually. Um, yeah, as you say that, I guess it's like in the earlier times when you're closest to whenever the event happened, I do remember thinking this reinforces your opening point. I remember thinking it was weird when people didn't say anything. I thought that was weird. Of like, he died and you're not even saying anything. That's so weird. It's like that's all I think about. So that I do remember feeling that. I also remember giving everyone grace because we're all that person. Like, so I always knew it wasn't bad intention. I am sure I've missed the mark on that many times and not recognized or thought of those things. I actually, because of that, when someone loses a parent, I sometimes remember that first Mother's Day, that first Father's Day, that first insert the holiday. I literally put it in my calendar to send them a text because I remember what a tidal wave those milestones felt like. And I just want them to know I'm thinking of them. That's it. So that's how tactical I've gotten on some of these where it's like, "Oh, I know waves are gonna come and hit them in that first year." Um, as time has gone on, I'd say I'm probably, the knife isn't as sharp, so maybe smiling more than crying. You know, I feel grateful whenever anyone wants to hear about him. It's like you're keeping them alive. You get to continue to share the impact that they've had on you. So I actually feel very connected when someone wants to hear about him. But to your point, the sharpness of maybe some of the trauma has dissipated.
Yeah. I have a question for you on that because I'm always trying to learn from people I see ask great questions about oh, tell me about your grandmother or what was your dad like or what was your, have you received any great questions that sort of opened the door for that? Or do you find
Oh,
yourself asking any particular ones when you're curious to learn about somebody and get the interesting stories?
um, yeah, I'll share one that caught me off guard in a beautiful way. This is a little woo-woo, so I'm just warning you now. Um, I remember, going through I had a lot of work to do after he died on a lot of, you know, unhealed, unrepaired areas. And so I went to therapy, and this therapist was great for me. We really connected. And I remember during one of the conversations, I was talking to her about something, and she said to me, "Well, what did your dad say when you talked to him about this?" It was something to that effect. And I was like, "Have you have you not been listening to the past 26 sessions? He's gone. I'm not sure if you got the main headline when I walked in here." And she kind of said to me, "Why does the relationship have to end? Why wouldn't you still talk to him? Why wouldn't you still share this challenge or ask for, Now, I recognize this might be really out there for a lot of people. And I actually heard it that way. I mean, I was kind of like, this is too woo woo for me." But I am always willing to consider new perspectives, and I was kind of inspired by it. And she did say, like, why does the relationship have to end? Why can't you still talk to him? Why can't you still ask him for advice? Why can't you still bring some of your challenges to him and ask for feedback? So I do that still. Um, Quite literally talk out loud to him, alone, outside, go on a walk, um, alone in the car. And I recognize that might be really out there for a lot of people, but it's been really a beautiful exercise, and it's heightened my awareness to kind of like energy, like you mentioned, energy signs from the universe, and what I choose to take back in, and then how I choose to action on that. So it was a question that stopped me in my tracks, to your point. Like, maybe that didn't really scratch the itch of what you're asking for, of like, "Tell me a story about your dad on XYZ," but it stopped me in my tracks around maybe thinking a little bit more expansively about relationships, that are very meaningful to us.
It's beautiful. That's
Aw.
great that you do that. I remember my dad came home from a talk one time, and he had lost my grandfather passed away when I was less than a year old. And so my father was maybe 25. And he came home from a talk and he said this line, "Death doesn't end a relationship, it just changes it."
So true.
And that's so much of, I
That's
think,
exactly
what
what she
you're
was saying.
describing there.
Yes, it was almost like she was challenging my limited thinking of, "So what, sorry, why did the relationship end?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, girlfriend, did you not hear what I walked in here with?" And it's been a really beautiful reframe for me. It doesn't fix all the things, just like you said. It doesn't solve for those things, but if you are willing to challenge yourself to that, you might be really amazed at what you get from it.
Fantastic.
What about,
Um,
well,
Go ahead.
I wanna hear your thoughts on that. Like, any questions that maybe people have asked about your grandmother, Fatma, that have really, I don't know, felt meaningful to drive that connection and you wanting to share more about them?
Um, Sometimes it's the simple ones, I think. Uh, tell me more about. I'm thinking back to the origin of this podcast, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about what was your friend Nick like? I'm thinking about getting to go to memorial, and he had sort of known people from all different walks of his life. Whether it was, I knew him from one job, he had friends from another job, right? He had friends from college, and when you come together and hear the stories, it sometimes fills out a picture, but sometimes the question can just be, um, "Oh, what were they like?" Or, "Did you have a
Mm.
favorite story or memory of that person?" Or, "Tell me more." I also always find it interesting, and sometimes I forget to do this, um, but to ask, "What was their name?"
Oh, when someone talks about someone, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh, like,
like
I'm
I
saying
have
my
a
dad, my dad, my dad,
uh-huh.
right? You're like, "Tim." His name was Tim.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people do it and they're very good at it if they're especially if they're, again, in my faith tradition, like I'm practicing Catholic, but like is because then they'll put their name like onto a list of prayers
Mm,
at a mass, etc. And say them by name. But I also think it's, nice to say the name and keep that alive in some way, shape, or
yeah.
form.
Yeah. That is beautiful,
But I
actually.
don't always do the best job asking that.
Oh,
Like I
no.
usually just kind of let people say what they're gonna say. Like my MO is usually to just try to lob in maybe something like, oh, tell me more about them. If you're not up for it, no worries. Like we can just do something else. But some other folks I find, like if it's genuine,
Right. If
it
it
can
feels
open the door.
authentic. That is beautiful, actually, because as you say that, I don't know, maybe only 1 or 2 people have actually asked me that, like, what was his name? And that feels very, intimate, like, "Wow, you're listening. You're, like, leaned in. You wanna hear about him?" Like, right? And so that's funny. Now that you say that, that's not a common question that I've gotten, and it is really beautiful. What's funny is if I meet Tims, I tell them that was my dad's name, and that I've never met a bad Tim. So, like, they better be pretty awesome. So that is pretty funny, though. I guess I put the pressure on on others to deliver on the name.
That's so funny. How great though. But it makes me think of there was this there's this guy I got to know a little bit through a networking circle from my graduate school. They were connecting alumni as we were leading up to a reunion, and so there was a group of 6 of us that were paired, and we had all gone to the school at different times, at different 5-year intervals. So we were had no idea who one another were, and unfortunately, he and his wife had tragically lost like their toddler son, and
Mm,
he sent out a note to us and then he sent a link to a website and they were they were sponsoring a corner in their local library in honor of their son. And it was so beautiful because he said, we would rather talk about him. Like this is the most tragic time in our lives. And also we have such fond memories of him and we want to keep his name and his spirit alive. And so,
mhm.
um, please don't hesitate to, share a story if you have one or to reach out. And I just remember being so struck about like, how could they be that, I don't know, evolved maybe
And
to
yeah,
in that moment of such, tragic and intense grief have the like offer that as such a gift. And I think that's what I said back to him. I think I said,
mm,
wow, what a gift that you're giving to us to proactively encourage people to talk about it, because I think
yeah,
that it's been my experience that it's not it totally depends and a lot of people have very different circumstances, so there is no
yeah,
one right answer, and I think that's the universal message of this podcast. So I'll
yeah,
preface this statement at that, but I myself have felt this way and I've heard some other people say that um bringing up the name or bringing up somebody who passed away, like you can't isn't hurtful because you're not like I'm thinking of that person all the time anyway.
yeah.
And
That's
so you bringing them up
right,
isn't a painful thing necessarily. Whether or not I
right.
want to engage in a conversation right then and there, that's a whole different story. But by indicating that you care or asking or mentioning it, it's usually not the bad thing. Sometimes, to your point, it's like, wait, are we not talking about this? Like, if we don't
Yes,
mention the fact that this happened, that
yes.
can be um,
Hurtful. Or
more awkward to
I
deal with.
yeah, I felt it was hurtful, but I had to do some work on myself of, like, no one's trying to hurt you here, right? It's on first of all, at the end of the day, everyone's kinda, like, living their life for themselves. Let's just be real, like, they're thinking about what's for dinner and what they gotta do that night. It's kinda like we all get back into our lanes, right? So there's that reality, and then there's, they love you, they care for you, and they don't know what to say. Insert why you are starting this podcast, these videos, so that there are some practical, tangible tips of say this, not that. With the headline, like you said, there is no perfect answer. But what I'm hearing is say something over nothing and be willing to fumble. Be willing to fumble. You'll learn it actually will probably disarm the entire situation and drive more connection, frankly. Right. And, then
Absolutely.
we'll get feedback on something that's effective to say. So, a reminder that, I remember being a little hurt by it when people wouldn't say things, thinking like, "How could they not?" And, you know, uh, we have a hard time accepting hard things, and so it's a little bit easier not to talk about them. I actually love your point that it's often when people do say things, it's them assigning meaning to us. That, like, really resonated with me of hearing things. I remember people saying things which were also well intended, and these are people that I love and adore and I'm grateful for, but things like, you know, "Your dad is in a better place," or "He will live on," and "Your grandkids," like, all these things are true, and thank you. They don't really make me feel better. Like, you
Well,
know?
I think actually you hit on it so crisply right there, is that nothing we can ever say or do actually takes the pain away, really. Like, it's not
Mhm,
we think we wanna make the person feel better, but
mhm,
a lot of the learning that I've found, particularly when dealing with grief, is that you can't make them feel better. And so just saying, I almost want to rewind to a minute ago when you
mhm,
said, I love you, I care about you, I don't know what to say.
mhm,
Actually, just that. And I hope I got you right. Cause I was just,
mhm,
this is a
mhm.
perfect example of I'm often listening for what do other people say
Yeah,
and that I can
yeah.
say this and
Mhm,
not that. And so what I heard you say was, I love you, I care about you, I don't know what to say.
mhm,
And for sure, I will be using that.
mhm. Yeah, and if those are the things you say, "I love you, I care about you, I don't know what to say," then maybe underpin it with the things you do. You show up, you glow up, you drop off coffee, you drop off bagels, you take their baby, you send them down for a nap. You give and
Yeah.
expect nothing in return because that's what unconditional love really is all about, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of giving, thank you so much for giving so much of your time, Katie, and for having this discussion and for helping me to kick off this project. I couldn't think of a better person to be the first guest. So I
I
really, really appreciate it.
I'm honored and I'm excited. I will be listening and watching all of these videos relative to say this, not that, because I promise I'll give you enough stimulus on a daily basis of the ways that I fumble, the things that I learn. So we'll get a lot of intel there.
All right. Thank you.